Hey, welcome into the Big Ten Huddle. I'm your host, JR, and we have got a lot to talk about going on in the Big Ten. The big news from today is that Chris Holtmann has been fired from Ohio State. We have Tim from the Views from the Schott podcast, the Big Banter Sports Ohio State affiliate podcast, with us to talk about that. We're also going to have Anthony from Spartan Wire join us here soon, but we'll also have Rajeev here with us to talk through a little bit of what was going on with Wisconsin, them breaking their 4-game losing streak against Ohio State, which is fortunate for them. So let's check in with these guys, and then we'll get into it. Tim, how you doing tonight?
Better now that I'm here with you. Excited to talk Ohio State basketball breaking news, and less excited to talk about Ohio State losing to Wisconsin.
Yeah. We'll talk about the fortunate bright side of the future and what is to come of Ohio State. Rajeev, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing well. The opposite of Tim. I'm happy to talk about the Wisconsin-Ohio State game because we were desperate for a victory to get back on track. And yeah, happy to get into other stuff as well.
All right, sounds good. Let's go ahead and get into it then, guys. So Ohio State has fired Chris Holtmann. Chris Holtmann was 30-30 over the past 2 seasons in Big Ten play. He was 9-25. And I just want to say one thing before we start talking about this stuff and all the things that are going on with it. Chris Holtmann is widely regarded as one of the best character head coaches, one of the nicest and kindest head coaches to media and guys like that out there. So this is, like I've said in previous podcasts, it is probably time for Chris Holtmann to go. I know the Ohio State fan base is excited that they're moving on to somebody else, but it should be noted that Chris Holtmann, just a really, really good guy, and we really do hope that he lands on his feet somewhere, whether that be at a smaller school like a Gardner-Webb that he was at before, or somewhere like in a Big East school, maybe a Butler or something like that. Obviously, Butler has Thad Matta right now, but just something like that where he can be on his feet and land somewhere that is good for him. Tim, we'll start with you first. What was your reaction to finding out that Chris Holtmann was fired from Ohio State?
Yeah, I think the timing was pretty curious, but it was clear that Chris Holtmann wasn't going to last after this offseason. I know he specifically thought that he was going to not only make it through this season, but he thought he was going to get 1 year under new athletics director Ross Bjork. So the timing wise, it doesn't bode well for Ohio State. Yes, they get out in front of it. They get to be kind of first in line to go start putting out some feelers with agents for, potential coaches and things like that. But the fact of the matter is that Ohio State right now has no coach. Obviously, Jake Dietler stepping in. He's not going to be the head coach next season for Ohio State, and no one's going to want to commit to this program until they find a head coach. And at the same time, players can now transfer out, because there's a coaching change, so players can get a head start on portaling as well. So the timing, not good for Ohio State, but it was clearly the decision was going to be made that Chris Holtmann would not return this year. So it 100% makes sense. I think the timing is a little odd.
So let me get this straight. So do you think that players will be able to transfer here in the middle of the semester? Do you think that's something that they'll look at doing, or do you think it's more likely at the end of the season we'll probably see some more of those transfers at that time?
Yeah, technically the transfer portal can open for players, 30-day. There's a 30-day window with these with a coaching change. And what Ohio State fans need to remember is that players do not commit to logos. They do not commit to universities. They do not commit to cities. They commit to coaches. So with Chris Holtmann being gone, very, very likely that Bruce Thornton, Roddy Gale, Felix Okpara, the Buckeyes' best players, are at least going to entertain the option to go find a new place to play next season. So, of course, on the flip side, it means Ohio State can potentially rebuild quickly and grab some players of their own out of the transfer portal. But 100%, there's 2 players on the roster right now who I would say, yeah, there's probably a high degree of likelihood they'll be back next season. And one of their 2 incoming freshmen, I think, will 100% be in. Other than that, this is going to be a completely new look roster next season.
Wow, that's crazy to think about. Rajeev, what was your reaction to seeing Chris Holtmann be let go earlier today?
Yeah, I mean, from an outsider of Ohio State in general, I think first of all, I agree with what Tim said about the timing. I never like to see mid-season firings unless there's an actual clear plan of succession in place where, if they really want Diebler to give him basically an audition and see if they're going to hire him. But you guys are saying he's not going to probably be the guy. So in that case, I think it is a little strange. And yes, the transfer portal is going to be a problem. I'm sure Wisconsin's hopefully eyeing up some guys as well. But I mean, ultimately, the guy had a great start, when he came in, and you guys, I think, had maybe Elite Eight with him, right? Am I right about that? Or
no, he never got past the second round.
Okay. All right. Oh, that's right. I'm sorry. But the last two seasons they've been down in the dumps, and Ohio State has a killer instinct, right? I mean, Ohio State is every other program in the Big Ten looks up to Ohio State as far as like obviously on a football level, but as an athletic department, there is a need for success. So, I think the decision to get rid of him is probably right and what's right for Ohio State. Timing of it's a little strange. But I completely agree about what you said about Chris Holtmann. Now, while I don't know the details of how nice of a guy he is from a coaching perspective, I absolutely think he will land on his feet. Definitely, like you said, Big East, I think that could definitely happen. But he's a good coach, and he's going to hopefully find success at his next place. And it'd be really interesting to see where Ohio State goes from here, how many players they lose and can retain. But really, the next phase of Ohio State's there, and it'll be fun to see what happens.
Yeah, no, a big thing for me is just seeing that Chris Holtmann lands on his feet. I'm confident that Ohio State will be fine and they'll make a good hire here. Ross Bjork is coming in, and I watched a little bit of Gene Smith's press conference after Chris Holtmann was let go earlier today. So, and I know that he is basically giving everything to Ross Bjork to be able to hire the new guy here. Gene said he would assist him and give him all the help he can possibly give him. But make no mistake, this will be Ross Bjork's hire for Ohio State. And with Ross Bjork, who seems to really want to get somebody good in here and really make sports a priority, I think that's going to be a thing that he's really going to focus on. Tim, what are some names that you would think of that could possibly be an Ohio State future head coach?
Yeah, I've seen 20, 30 names thrown out there. Essentially, if they've had any kind of success, they are in the mix, essentially, is what fans think. I think the kind of the top of the list names that you can think of are probably Mick Cronin and Nate Oates. Those would be the top two that Ohio State would likely pursue. Mick Cronin is from Cincinnati. Obviously, he brought Cincinnati up before moving to UCLA. Mick Cronin is fed up with how things are going at UCLA, fed up with the NIL situation at UCLA. UCLA just lost Chip Kelly for a very similar reason to Ohio State. So I think Mick Cronin may not necessarily be eager to leave, but if the right opportunity were to come, I think that he could be a potential fit. So Mick Cronin for sure. Nate Oates kind of feels like your dream candidate for sure. I'm not sure that he would be all that open to Ohio State. I feel like he's a better fit for Michigan. But those are some names that I would think of. And then kind of as you go down the list, there's a couple other names as well. I think Buzz Williams, just because of the connection with Texas A&M, I think that could be a name that Ohio State would consider. You got Sean Miller at Arizona. That would kind of be that second tier. Greg McDermott as well are some bigger names. And then you've got guys who, will come from the mid-major ranks that I think people have got a lot of interest in. But fans have got to be careful. Ohio State picked up Chris Holtmann, obviously from Butler, where at that time it was not a Power 6 conference or Power 6 program. It was technically a mid-major. So I would prefer that Ohio State go take someone who has actually done it in a power conference setting at this point. But a lot of names have been thrown out there. Those are a couple that I would say would be the top tier A-list candidates for the role.
Tim, could you see a possible return of Thad Matta, who is doing a pretty good job at Butler this season after having a losing season last year? But this Butler program was obviously not in a great situation when he got there, but they're obviously improving. Could you see a possibility of Thad Matta coming back to Ohio State?
Yeah, I really don't know. By the time that this podcast got started, Thad Matta was long gone from Ohio State. So I've never spoken with him. I have no idea what the sentiment is, but the connection is that he used to coach there, and the way things fell out for Thad Matta at Ohio State were very, very bad. So for him to want to return to Columbus, yeah, it may be a feel-good story, but there's no connection. Ross Bjork doesn't know Thad Matta as far as I'm aware. The connection is simply that he used to coach at Ohio State, and he's done a good job at Butler. So I wouldn't be surprised if Thad Matta is not in the mix here.
Interesting. All right, we got Anthony here, so we're going to bring Anthony in to join us here. There we go. And look at that. Everybody's in their nice right little box. How you doing, Anthony?
Good, fellas. Sorry I was a little bit late.
No, glad to have you here. So this next question is for you, Rajeev, and you, Anthony. Are there any players on this Ohio State roster that you're looking at and you're just kind of licking your chops and you're like, man, this would be a really nice guy to add to our roster, or this is going to be a hot commodity that might go to another Big Ten roster somewhere else? Anthony, because I know you're always tweeting out, is this guy for me and stuff like that on Twitter. We'll let you go first. What are your thoughts about potential players from Ohio State leaving and who you would like to see maybe be added to your roster?
For me is one of the best running bits, by the way. The little, whatever. So first off, I'm gonna step in for Rajeev here and say, Wisconsin, you already got your all-star transfer in AJ Storr, so you guys can just buzz off in this scenario. I can't remember the last time, if Tom Izzo actually used the portal mid-season. He's pretty sparing with how he uses it in general. So I'd have to go way back to remember the last time he did that. Obviously, I'd love to see a pure scorer like Roddy Gale or Bruce Thornton, but I know that everyone's going to be after them. It's, more options to space the floor. Although Michigan State has, figured out their three-point shooting a little bit better, sometimes their offense can stagnate a little bit. So, offensive creators like that could never hurt. In general, I think the obvious answer is going to be Felix Okpara. Just MSU has a hole at center. Maybe they're getting a little better play from someone like Carson Cooper, but I mean, that I would say more options at center, the better, right? We have an open scholarship. Let's use it if we can.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And that's honestly one of the guys I fear losing the most. Before we move to you, Rajeev, we do have a casual Big Ten Kent who's with us every now and then. JR brought the stars out tonight. Yes, we did, Kent. Just for you with this big episode, we did bring out the stars here. Rajeev, who are some guys that you're looking at on the Ohio State roster? It's like, man, I really hope this guy enters the portal and Greg Gard, looks and gives him a look.
Yeah, it's definitely Felix Okpara because we need a backup five. I mean, Stephen Crowell is good, but he's not great. He's not as physical as a guy like Okpara can be and is. He's had 59 blocks this year, by the way. Wow, that's fantastic. Yeah, that's the guy. And our look, I think anyone is going to be happy with Bruce Thornton because he's very efficient and he's very creative guard, which is great. We just don't need that right now. We've got Chucky Hepburn. We have John Blackwell. We've got Daniel Freitag coming in next season. We've got plenty of twos and Klesman and Asijan. So I feel like at this point, we really just need Okpara, and I hope we go after him because that's literally the exact kind of player that we need. Someone who is a decent rim protector, who has some size and can play a physical five. And we just need cover at that position, which we don't have right now.
Wow, sounds like Felix Okpara will be a pretty big name out there for some people to go after. Tim, I didn't write this question down for you, but I'm sure it's an opinion question. I'm sure you'll be able to answer it pretty easily. Are there any guys on this roster for Ohio State that you're just like, oh my gosh, please no, please do not, go after this guy, whether young guys or guys who have proven themselves so far this season? Are there any guys like that for you that you're just like, oh my gosh, please don't take him. We really need him to stay?
Yeah, it would be Bruce Thornton, number one. He would be the only one in that top tier. Roddy Gale has shown some really poor stretches of play this season where he struggled with turnovers and just not looking like a Division I basketball player at times with this decision making. Felix Okpara, very good rim protector. I think Wisconsin would love a guy like Felix Okpara, given that Nolan Winter is 6'11", has 0 blocks in his entire career. So that would be huge, I think, for Wisconsin. But I think far and away it would be Bruce Thornton. And then got to remember, Ohio State has had now 2 top 8 recruiting classes in a row. So that freshman class where Tayson Chapman has gotten no playing time so far this season. Scotty Middleton was suspended for a game. Even Austin Parks could be a player who could portal out as well, although I don't really expect that. But even that freshman class, there's going to be some players who are going to say, I didn't get my playing time this year. I committed to a coach. That coach is gone. I have nothing keeping me here in Columbus. So I'm going to take my talents elsewhere. So I think the number one player would be Bruce Thornton, but there's going to be plenty who are lining up.
That's crazy to think about. Oh, go ahead.
I do know that Izzo recruited Devin Royal pretty hard too. He was in, I can't remember if it was his top 3 or top 5 or whatever, but Michigan State was definitely in the mix for him late. So wouldn't surprise me to see them take a look at him too.
Gosh darn it, Anthony. That was the guy I was going to say that I really like the potential that Devin Royal has. And I think that he's a player that, if he sticks around, the new coach who comes in could really do something with him. But, if Tom Izzo's calling your name, it's kind of hard to say no to Tom Izzo. So, all right. Good discussion there, guys. Let's go ahead and move on to Ohio State and Wisconsin. And this is something Tim will stick around for, but Tim's going to head out after this game. Tim, we'll let you kind of go first here, and then we'll let Rajeev just tell us how great Wisconsin was in this game. But we'll let Tim go first. Tim, what were your thoughts on the Ohio State loss over Wisconsin?
Yeah, I hammered Ohio State for one of the first times this season, and I would say it's the most lazy and hard to prove and easy take in the world, but Ohio State did not play hard in this one. They got out rebounded in the first half, 22-9. They gave up 6 offensive rebounds in the first half, leading to 11 points. And there were players who were just out of position and did not try to rebound. Felix Okpara got out rebounded by AJ Storr once. Devin Royal got out rebounded by Chucky Hepburn late in the first half. And it was just a simple fact of this team did not really prove that it wanted to be there in that game against Wisconsin. They lost by 8, and they were -9 in the free throw battle. Wisconsin made 8 free throws. I think Ohio State made 1. So maybe they were -7. I don't remember what the exact number was, but they lost by 8. So this game was more than winnable for Ohio State, but the offense continues to be sticky. They play like they're playing in rain boots. You've got, it's the typical reverse the ball screen. Bruce Thornton try to roll. If he doesn't get anything, he's going to reverse it, and they'll throw up a bad 3 at the end of the shot clock. So it was another really, really poor performance from Ohio State offensively. Defensively, they were dropping on every single ball screen. They were not talking or communicating through off-ball screens and giving up a bunch of open looks to Wisconsin. They were in it through the end of the first half. With the amount of open looks that they gave to Wisconsin in the first half, it was clear they weren't going to be able to stick around in the second, and Wisconsin ended up pulling away even with how well Ohio State played offensively in the second half. So not a good performance. Understand in this regard why Ohio State decided to part ways with Chris Holtmann. With that type of performance, the team looked lost. The team did not look inspired. And it's a lazy take, and it's hard to prove, but that's what I saw from Ohio State.
Well, Rajeev, there was no better team to, get at home. Maybe Michigan would be the only other better team, but fortunately Illinois got them at home earlier in the day. But there was pretty much no better team to get at home to break a 4-game losing streak. Did you see what you wanted to see from the Badgers to make that happen, or do you maybe still have some concerns after the past 5 games?
There's definitely some concerns. I mean, the 4-game losing streak, especially the losses at Michigan and Rutgers, just opened up a huge can of worms. The first half in Nebraska was great. Since halftime in Nebraska game, we've been a bit of a different team. So we needed the Ohio State win, which was great. Ultimately, the Grey Guard made some adjustments. There were some clear coaching moves that needed to be made, and really just more player decisions. AJ Storr has been fantastic for us, absolutely fantastic. But the one area where Badger fans really question is shot selection, especially at times around the 3-point arc. And there's been a clear message to AJ Storr to drive, get dribble penetration, use your athleticism, and get to the rim, get fouled if you can't finish. And he did that last night, and he was crashing the boards. He had 14 points, 12 rebounds. We out-rebounded Ohio State 39-26. That's obviously why we won the game. There's no doubt about that. But Steven Crow also really needed to kind of refocus on his game. And be more aggressive. When he's open at the top of the key, he needs to shoot the ball every time. There is no reason why he shouldn't. But he's been a little gun shy lately. He's been bodied up by very physical 5s. Another reason I want Okpara. And so that's a weakness of his. He's been doubled down a lot in the post, and then he's trying to get out of that and making some poor passes. We still turn the ball over way too much, but it was a better game. It's a game we needed to win. And if we have to win ugly like that to get our win total ready for March, that's fine. We've got another road game at Iowa this weekend, and that's going to be difficult, but we just got to keep winning at home. So was it super pretty? No. Are Badger fans thrilled? No, but I still said it's a huge win because when you're on a 4-game losing streak, your season can go in a tailspin very, very quickly, or you can bounce back and realize, okay, you're still in 3rd in the Big Ten. You can probably finish 2nd. You can still get a top 5, top 6 seed in the tournament. So everything's in front of you. And that's the mentality we had last night. And really the coaching moves, I think, were big. And the players responded clearly to what was needed.
Yeah, no, anytime you're on a losing streak, you get that win. It doesn't really matter how you play. It's a huge win. And obviously you want to nitpick, how did they play and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, you're just glad to walk away with the win for sure. So Anthony, outside perspective, watching the game, obviously you didn't have really any rooting interest, but Wisconsin has been struggling. Ohio State just came off a win against Maryland. What were your thoughts over the game?
I'd say I have some rooting interest. MSU is still in the mix for a top 4 seed. So anytime a team that's in the mix for that top 4 and, getting a double bye is, it's nice to have that.
Right.
This was definitely a get right game for Wisconsin, right? They desperately needed this one, losing at Michigan. That's ugly. Rutgers, maybe a little less so because they're always tough at the rack, but still Wisconsin's a significantly better team than them. And they needed to step up their play. It was gritty. It was low scoring, right? I think it was 39 points in the first 15 minutes of the game between the two teams, which is that's just really ugly. Unfortunately, Ohio State fell victim to their very inconsistent offense. They had one field goal in the last 7 minutes of the half, and that just on the road, that's not going to cut it. And they were, you guys touched on it already, but the rebounding, you could see a discernible difference. Wisconsin was getting all the 50-50 balls, and that made the difference. Credit to Ohio State for getting it within 5, midway through the second half, but you could just see that they didn't have the legs, the steam to stick with Wisconsin. So, definitely get right game for Wisconsin. They want to stay in the mix for a top 4 seed, and not just in the Big Ten, but in the tournament as well. And a game like this is, if they lose a game like this, that really puts them in danger of losing that, top 4 slot in the tournament and getting a, favorable draw.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, they if Michigan State can get one of those top seeds in the tournament, it's definitely going to help them out in a few different ways. And Wisconsin is certainly one of those teams that needs to fall a little bit lower for that to happen. Tim, as you watch Ohio State lose this game and you kind of think about Ohio State now moving on without Chris Holtmann in the gameplay, things like that, do you have any hope for maybe the team will come out more inspired? Maybe this team can, maybe go on an end of the year run, kind of like they did in the Big Ten tournament last year with Jake Diebler as the head coach now, just coming off of this game and seeing the way Ohio State played kind of uninspired ball. Do you have any thoughts going forward with Ohio State after this?
Yeah, I have less hope than I did this morning, essentially. Chris Holtmann is the players' coach. Everything that I've heard within the program is that the players, even through all of this, still love playing for Chris Holtmann. There was also a report that came out that the players did not get to say goodbye to Chris Holtmann today.
Wow.
And I think that's going to hurt morale as well. And look, Jake Diebler is essentially the offensive coordinator for Ohio State. In the past 2 seasons, they've been outside the top 40 in offensive efficiency. That'll be the first time that happened since 2016 and 2017. Outside of that, they're absolutely garbage defensively. So, no, I don't really have a lot of hope that Ohio State can be any better. I think it's going to hurt their morale. Jake Diebler has no head coaching experience. They have one other coach on the entire coaching staff with head coaching experience who never went over 500 in his 5 seasons at Miami of Ohio, returned 99% of scoring production, 98% of rebounding production, and all 5 starters in his final year at Miami, and still could not go over 500. So I think this is another issue with Chris Holtmann during his time at Ohio State. He didn't really build the strongest staff. And I don't think that right now Jake Diebler is going to be able to push them in the right direction. I think this game against Purdue is going to be a bloodbath, and it's going to be tough for Ohio State to pick up more than 2 wins down the stretch here.
Well, it's going to be hard for it to be worse than the bloodbath was this past weekend when IU played Purdue. So as long as they don't have that kind of performance, they're good, right?
Don't challenge Ohio State with a good time. That's all I'll say.
I'm just glad that Zach Edey got his first career 3 out of the way, because I was certain for a fact that it was going to happen against Michigan State. It still might happen when we go to Mackey. We just that place is a house of horrors for us. Question: Is Jake Diebler related to John?
Yes, he is. They're brothers. Okay. Jake actually had as good as a high school career as John did in the state of Ohio. I think he leads Ohio still in either assists or steals in high school basketball history. So yes, they are related. Basically all of that team, Greg Oden, John Diebler, and I think maybe William Buford are all involved in the staff there at Xavier with Thad Matta. So yeah, it's a family affair over there at Butler, and Jake's still here with Ohio State.
Yeah. I love John Diebler when he played at Ohio State, and the thought of Jake Diebler is fun.
I remember that game at Penn State where he hit 10. That dude could just fill up the scoreboard like none other.
The good old days. Yep.
Jake Diebler might get the job if he has a way of bringing John Diebler back. That's a good point. We should reach out to Gene Smith and see if there's possibility there. All right, before we move on, Rajeev, Wisconsin, obviously, they have 6 games left. You mentioned the game at Iowa. Their 2 biggest games left on the schedule. They play at home against Illinois, and then final game of the season at Purdue. Just give us real quick your expectations for this team ending out the season. And, would you be happy with maybe a 3 or a 4 seed, or do you think they need to continue to win and they can get higher than that? What are your thoughts just overall the rest of the season, Rajeev?
Yeah, I mean, I think we, at this point, based on coming into the season, if you'd have told me we were going to be finished 3rd or 4th in the Big Ten, we would have taken it. But we had a great start to the year, and AJ Storr was even better than we thought he was going to be. And the addition of Blackwell as a freshman, he's been a great 6th man. So at this point, though, I do kind of expect I want to finish 2nd, and that's where I want to finish 2nd in the league. Obviously, no one's catching Purdue, and that's fine. But I think Illinois and Wisconsin, they're probably a better team than us overall. They've got a ton of athleticism, but I think we can finish above them. So at this point, we got 3 road games left, Iowa, Indiana, and Purdue. If we win 1, that's great. Our home games, we got Illinois at home. We've got Maryland at home. We need to win our home games, lose a couple road games. That finishes 7 losses. I think that probably puts us in 2nd or 3rd place, and that's fine. Ultimately, what we're going for, preferably, is a top 4 to 5 seed in the NCAA tournament, and it's all about the draw and see what happens. I mean, I think that we can be a Sweet 16 team. That's probably the ceiling for us at this point. Maybe if the draw is lucky, we can compete for an Elite 8 spot, but that's unlikely. We just want to get to the Sweet 16. That's something that Greg Gard needs to have done. And whether it happens this year, who knows, but we need to compete and we need to be in a position to actually make it happen.
Very good. Yeah, makes sense. All right, so Tim's going to head out. Tim, you got any more final thoughts or anything you want to say before you get out of here?
No, one thing I will say, I guess, is, it's kind of sad to see Chris Holtmann go, kind of like you mentioned, JR. He's just a good guy. He's a good dad. He's a good husband. The program for 7 years was clean under Chris Holtmann. And it's sad to see the Ohio State fan base rejoice over a guy getting fired. As a guy who's been fired before, you feel pathetic. You feel embarrassed. You have no idea where you're going to go. And people can say, yeah, Chris Holtmann made millions of dollars. He got paid $12.1 million just to get fired. I get that, but at the same time, he's a human being who feels emotions as well. Was nothing but kind to me, whenever we talked. So best of luck to Chris Holtmann in the future. He'll find a job very, very easily. And follow Views from the Schott podcast on Twitter, on Instagram, on YouTube, and wherever you get your podcast. Subscribe. It's free. I don't take your info. If I did take it, I would not know how to use it anyway. So make sure you follow, subscribe, and talk to me about Ohio State hoops. So that's all I got. Thanks for having me on.
All right. Thanks, Tim. Have a good one tonight. All right. We're going to switch on over to Michigan State now. Oh, Anthony, you're not. Bucky Report. There we go. All right. So this Michigan State and Penn State game that happened earlier tonight, good win for Michigan State. I know there were some Spartan fans that were a little concerned going on the road, and that was something that Spartan fans wanted to see, was a road win. And obviously not, the most difficult team in the world, but Penn State has been known to kind of get up there and play a good game and give teams some scares. But I felt like Michigan State kind of had the game in hand most of the game, and they kept it there. It was nice to see they didn't really have a letdown to let Penn State get back into the game and make it scary there at the end. I'm curious what your thoughts are on the win, Anthony.
Yeah, so I mean, we've been watching the Malik Hall show for the second half of this season. He's just erupted and, gotten the classic case of Izzo senioritis in the best way possible. He's been an elite finisher. He was 10 for 13 today from the field. His 3-point shooting, he doesn't take many. He takes 1, maybe 2 a game, but he's shooting over 50% in conference play, which he is a weird, awkward shot, but if it goes in, I'm not going to complain about it.
Right.
Great to see Akins step up on the road. Obviously he was scorching hot in the first half. He's 4 for 7 from 3 on the game, and he had that crazy yam dunk in the first half. I'm not sure if you got to see it or not, but it was in transition. It was unbelievable dunk. So that was really good from him. I was a little disappointed to see AJ Hoggard have such a quiet game, given that he's from Pennsylvania, given that he I don't know, a lot of his family was probably there. He had a really good game at Penn State last year. He had 23 points. So I was a little bummed that he was quiet tonight, but it's, you take what you get, I guess, with AJ. I know when he's dialed in, it's a hard team to beat, but again, if you're getting 20 from Akins and 29 from Hull, a road win's a road win, right? You can't complain about that. MSU showed a lot of energy, first half. They put together good offensive pieces where they were moving the ball well. Their mid-range, shooting was really good. So and actually, Carson Cooper stepped up. He had 10 points tonight. That was one of his, maybe his best game of the season, or one of his better ones. So this is the time of the year where you see Izzo really hone in on a 7 or 8 player lineup. He's done all of his tinkering. I think he kind of knows what pieces he has at this point, and he's really just going to roll with the squad that he has. It's part of the reason I think he's probably not going to go to the transfer portal, because he knows the chemistry of this team, and I don't know if he's going to inject something he doesn't know about into that mix mid-season, helpful as it may be.
Yeah, no, that's crazy to think about the things going on there, and how Izzo has been able to just ride with his guys and not make any huge wholesale changes, even through some of the adversity that this team has faced this year. But I mean, when you look at it, results like this, road wins against Big Ten teams, which it's not easy to beat any Big Ten team on the road. It's hard to argue with results like that. So, Rajeev, this game happened earlier tonight. So what were your thoughts on the Michigan State win over Penn State?
Yeah, one thing that I'm always very consistent on all the time is that any road win in the Big Ten is a good win. Take the win on the road. If you can split your games on the road, and do well at home, you're probably going to be in the mix for the league. So I think any win's good. We lost to Penn State. I think it's weird because it's a kind of a crappy atmosphere. They seem to have no fans that go to the games, but for some reason, I mean, look, it's hard to win those games because the confidence level of the home team is so huge. So, yeah, look, I like many people, was happier when Michigan State was a little bit lower on the standings. And then because the Tom Izzo team, and even though, you don't have a lot of points here from Walker and Hoggard, I mean, like, Malik Hall is incredible. Akins is incredible. They're really good players. And I just feel like I don't want to see Michigan State anytime soon. We already beat them twice this year. I don't want to see them in the Big Ten tournament. I don't want to see them in the NCAA tournament. They're a scary team because they've got great athletes and because they have Tom Izzo on the bench. Tonight, I thought was a very professional type win. The second half, I think Penn State played really nice. I mean, they're a very open team, and I feel like they got good looks, and they kind of put a little fear in Michigan State here and there. But for the most part, every single time there'd be a little Penn State run, Malik Hall would do something else, right? Or Akins would shoot another 3. I mean, so I feel like that's the kind of win you need to have on the road. Michigan State is just continuing to improve. They had a slow start to the season, obviously underachieved expectations, but I don't think anyone wants to see them in March, and they're once again going to be dangerous. So yeah, this was a good win for them, and exactly what you need to do to just keep climbing up the Big Ten standings.
Yeah, no, for sure. We got some people here in the chat. Sonny says it's on for second, Rajeev. He knows
Sonny,
you in Illinois.
Play us once, and you got to come to Madison. So we're happy about that.
Yeah, I'm sure that was more about the Wisconsin schedule earlier, but I wanted to make sure we had Sonny give a shout out there. So Anthony, you kind of mentioned AJ Hoggard. AJ Hoggard to me is the puzzle piece to this Michigan State team that is going to not dictate some of these games against Penn State, but some of these larger games where they do play better teams. And, like you said, against Illinois, he was huge. He was somebody that basically gave them that comeback at the end of the game and played very well throughout the game to keep them close there. But what are just your thoughts on AJ Hoggard? Can he be this kind of puzzle piece that helps the team, or are you kind of like, man, we need it, but we're just not really sure if we're going to get it?
So this is one of the most contentious Izzo players, point guards, that I think people will think about. People love AJ when he's, doing well, and they just hate him when he doesn't look dialed in, when he's, showing lack of effort. Izzo and Hogard have a storied, relationship too. They really get into each other. At Illinois, the thing that he did that I think shows that this Izzo team is really starting to gel, put it together, kind of clear out whatever cobwebs were there earlier in the season, is Izzo was, getting ready to shout at someone on the court, and AJ, he didn't push him back, but he basically put his hand out to Izzo and said, like, no, I got this. The best Izzo teams that they have are the ones where he has a coach that's on the floor. And Walker is a dog in terms of like getting a bucket, but he's not the straw that stirs the drink in terms of getting this team, being the leader on this team. That's AJ. AJ is the leader that this team needs to have if they want to make a run. So I truly believe he has that in him. I saw it in him in March last year. If you watch that game against K-State, AJ was just, he turned it into another gear. They didn't win that game just because K-State couldn't miss a bucket, and Marquise Noel had 30 assists or whatever. But AJ showed, hung right in there and took a team that was a 7 seed to an almost Elite 8, right? So it's, as he is dialed in, this team that shows this team their ceiling.
Yeah, I mean, that's the biggest thing, like you said, the leadership aspect of it and everything that goes into it there. That's huge. Rajeev, we were talking about the top 4 earlier and how you kind of want that double bye, but we got 2 teams here in Northwestern and Michigan State. And yes, we are going to talk about Northwestern a little bit later and their big matchup with Rutgers. But do you think that Michigan State is going to be able to get in that top 4, or do you think that they've just been too inconsistent this year and you think it's more of Northwestern's game to take? They kind of have some similar schedules here down the road. I would say Northwestern is easier. However, Northwestern and Michigan State do play, and it is at Michigan State, second last game of the year. I'm curious your thoughts on who do you think will kind of be that 4th piece, because right now it looks like it will be Purdue, Illinois, and Wisconsin. So if we just assume that, who's going to be the 4th piece to these double buys?
I'm never going to count out Michigan State. Northwestern just doesn't have the pedigree that Michigan State has. Obviously, they've got Boo Buie, and he's fantastic, and he's been on lights out most of the year. And yeah, Michigan State has been inconsistent, but the thing is, they're getting more consistent. They're playing better. I mean, you watch their games; they're just playing better basketball. I believe they actually out rebound. They've had rebounding issues. We out rebounded them by 10 tonight. I think they finally stepped up and rebounded the ball better. They've been rebounding it better in general. And correct me if I'm wrong, Anthony, but that's what I've kind of just seen. So I feel like I'm never going to count them out. I'm going to say Michigan State will get 4th because they're Michigan State, and they've simply got better players than Northwestern does. They've got better players than a lot of our teams do. But they've had an iffy start, but like I said, I absolutely think they'll get 4th. Northwestern is really good, and I'm excited to continue watching them, but I think they're going to, as we've said many times, winning on the road's hard, no matter where you play, all the way down to Michigan and Ohio State. Like, it's still hard to win there too. But they're going to just kind of stumble down the stretch, whereas a Tom Izzo team tends to find it when it matters.
Yeah, no, they definitely. What were you gonna say, Anthony?
The other thing you're going to want to keep in mind is that they just announced it today. Ty Berry tore his meniscus and is out for the rest of the season.
Yes,
that's actually one of my talking points for the preview for Northwestern. But they have 3 guys who've hit 53s on the season. He's one of them, and they're a great outside shooting team. But losing a guy like that, it's going to make it harder to win games down the stretch. So I think it's hard to ignore one of your key starting contributors being out the rest of the year.
Yeah, no, for sure. And that's a huge piece there. That could be hard for them. Philip actually was saying the same thing. The Ty Berry injury could be a major problem for Northwestern. He's been a huge piece to their offense so far this year. Basically every big game you see him in, the announcers are talking about Boo Buie and right-hand man Ty Berry right there, being able to hit shots. And Northwestern has even gone to Ty Berry sometimes late in games over Boo Buie. So it's been interesting to see that dynamic there. All right, guys, let's go ahead. Before we do move on, I do want to remind you about CBB Analytics. CBB Analytics gives me a free pro tier to tell you every time we have a basketball episode about them. So CBB Analytics is a stats and analytics group that they put out really good analytics, really in-depth advanced defensive stats, advanced offensive stats. It's not just your traditional box scores type stuff. They also do a lot of graphs, a lot of shooting charts, things like that. really good information that helps you be a better basketball fan and more knowledgeable about the game. Even if you don't want to pay for CBB Analytics, there is a free tier and some other kind of tiers where it costs less money and things like that. So definitely check out CBB Analytics. They have a lot of awesome content. I love that I have the pro tier. It's the free pro tier. Sometimes I'll just get on there and look up random stats, which sounds weird, but when you have all these stats at your hand, sometimes that's what you do. So check out CBB Analytics. It's a great resource. All right, guys, let's move on to Michigan and Illinois. I don't know how much there is to talk about this game other than Illinois, good, Michigan, no Doug McDaniel, on the road, bad. Terrence Shannon Jr., how dare we ever question this man? 31 points, 30 assists, 3 rebounds, was just absolutely spectacular. 5 3-pointers in this game. Rajeev, what are your thoughts on Illinois nearly scoring 100 at home and just absolutely obliterating Michigan?
Yeah, no one questions the skill of Terrence Shannon. Of course, maybe whether or not he should be playing, that's another discussion. But look, I think that they have so many athletes. I mean, you look across Illinois, they're a scary looking team. You know, Guerrier and Damask and the guy I'm forgetting, Hawkins. Like they're long, they're athletic, they're extremely skilled, and Shannon's fantastic. Like he is who he is. They're one of the best teams in the conference. They're arguably one of the best teams in America, and I am excited to see them go up against Purdue again and see how they fare and against us. But look, Michigan's just bad. I mean, that's just what they are. They beat us because we had one of the worst little stretches of our history. It was awful this past week, but without McDaniel, they're a different team, and they don't have it. It doesn't surprise me at all, honestly. I just feel like that place, we talk about going on the road in the Big Ten. Well, Champaign is a ridiculously hard place to play. I hate going to Champaign. I think there's no arena in this conference that scares me as an opponent more than that place, just because the fans are on top of you. Everyone's all dressed in orange. I feel like the atmosphere's always been great at Assembly Hall. So I think that look, they're a really good team, and it doesn't surprise me one bit that they did this. And you expect them to do this, right? This is what you expect from one of the top teams in the conference. This is what Purdue does to teams. This is what we've done to Michigan State. Sorry. But I mean, good for them. I'm excited to play them. They are absolutely skilled. And it's not just about the Big Ten. Illinois is a team that I feel like has true Final Four ceiling this year, just because of Shannon and the ridiculous long list of athletes they have. And Damask has been such a nice addition for them. So yeah, very impressive, and not a difficult game, but it's going to be interesting to see how this progresses and whether or not they can, solidify the second spot.
Yeah, no, for sure. It was definitely an impressive performance, and this team just impresses me whenever I watch them, if nothing else, for the type of basketball and the brand of basketball they play. Just so many switches, and everything seems like a mismatch. I love when you see 4 guys on the perimeter. It's all their 4 longest and lankiest guys, and then you have Ty Rogers, who's 6'6". He looks like a little guy out there with all the other guys, but then Ty Rogers is posting somebody up, and it's like, what in the world is offense? Am I watching college basketball or the NBA here? But that's kind of what they do, and it's really interesting, and it's fun to watch. So Anthony, obviously Michigan not having the best year. Oh, I meant to highlight this from Philip. Illinois has won 8 straight against Juwan Howard led Michigan. I saw that stat and wanted to mention that earlier, so I'm glad Philip reminded me there. Thank you. Michigan just kind of on a downward spiral here. Seems like they've been on a downward spiral for a couple months now. Your thoughts on Illinois defeating Michigan?
So first off, I want to point out that it is possible to fire a coach mid-season. Not that Ward Manuel would do that, but it is possible to do that.
Did you hear his comments earlier today?
I heard the "You're welcome" post-game comment.
No.
Was there something else I missed?
Yeah, Nicole Auerbach from The Athletic.
Oh, about Ward. Yeah, yes, I did hear his comment.
Yeah, he was like, I've not even considered it. And it's like, really?
Okay. All right. I'm not going to complain. You want to keep Juwan there, knock yourself out.
Yeah. Oh, and here's the thing. If we bash Ward Manuel, I think Michigan fans are all for that, because I think that's like the unifying thing amongst everybody right now. But anyway, sorry, go ahead.
So anyway, sorry, to derive from the game. So in general, Michigan has been able to hang with most teams for the first half, and then their second half point differential has been horrendous. It's like minus 130 or something like that in Big Ten play. It's just a ridiculous second half point differential where they let a lead get away. Wisconsin was actually one of the rare games they didn't let a lead get away at halftime. So this game actually was even out of control before halftime. Michigan had it, within 4 with a couple minutes left to close the half, but then Illinois went on a 16-2 run, and it's like Michigan never really recovered after that. I think Illinois was able to sit their starters for like 8 minutes of the second half. At that point, the backups were playing Michigan against Michigan starters. Overall, this is a great response from Illinois. They dropped a tough one, at Michigan State, but this is a bad Michigan team. And, they never really let up. They have athletes all over the place. They have a ton of length. They're really tough defensively. I still think Coleman Hawkins is one of the best all-around players in the Big Ten in terms of all of the ways that he can affect the game on both ends of the floor. Hard to find too many flaws with Illinois offensively, right? They're averaging 82 or 83 points a game. Last 2 times they've done that, they've made a Final Four. So, take that for what you will. They've got all the pieces to put up numbers. Can they defend, right? That's if they run into a hot team, you saw against Michigan State, Illinois, Michigan State was just running circles around them towards the end of the game. They were making really tough shots, good shots, and Illinois, that's what's going to come down to how far this team can go is their defensive ceiling.
Yeah, and I feel like sometimes they can get in their own head, right? When the other team goes on a run, it's almost like Illinois just has this hard time of coming back from that. Now, they've definitely done it this season. I'm not saying it's been a struggle throughout the entire season, but, I think most people kind of saw that in the Tennessee game where Tennessee started to get up and it was harder for Illinois to get back. And that's kind of what I felt like was happening with Michigan State when Michigan State started to come back, and then Illinois, struggling to get back into that game, make a run back. But definitely no question on what the ceiling for this Illinois team is. If they play a good brand of basketball throughout the entire tournament, this is a Final Four caliber team. And one of the big reasons for that, oh, there goes Anthony. Maybe he'll come back. One of the big reasons for that, Rajeev, is Coleman Hawkins and his defensive ability. Now, Sonny and I kind of had a little bit of a conversation on, is he Defensive Player of the Year? I think he's in the conversation. I don't know if he is the Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year. A lot of people seem to be thinking that. What say you, Rajeev? Are you on board with Coleman Hawkins Defensive Player of the Year? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's hard to argue against that. I mean, the guy's a great defensive player. I mean, I'm always gonna go for Chucky Hepburn just because I think he's the best defender in the conference. But I mean, Hawkins is. If there was one person on any Big Ten team, any player that I wanted on any team, not Zach Edey because he's whatever, but it's Hawkins. I mean, he is so versatile. He's like this perfect player that's just a extremely long, lanky guy that's got handles and can shoot and can do everything on the floor. He's an all-around athlete. And to me, like Shannon's great, but Hawkins is not their second best player. And I think that, he's Defensive Player of the Year. I wouldn't hate it if he got it. Obviously, I always want Chucky to get it, but it's fine. I mean, I think it's a very worthy award for him.
Yeah, no, for sure. And that's what I'm saying is like, yes, he's probably the second best player on the team, but I think you can make an argument that Coleman Hawkins is the most important and the most impactful player on this team, because I really do feel like Illinois goes as Coleman Hawkins goes. Terrence Shannon Jr. is going to get his every single game. He's gonna score and he's gonna be that slasher, but also make those threes when you lay off him and stuff. But at the end of the day, Coleman Hawkins is the most impactful and most important player on this team. In my mind, Sonny is saying Hawkins may be the team MVP this year. I think so, especially with seeing Terrence Shannon Jr. go out earlier this year. Domas filled in really, really well, but Hawkins has been kind of that consistent piece all year long. Would you say, Anthony, would you agree with that Coleman Hawkins has been the most important piece of this Illinois team this year?
Yeah, I mean, he's kind of the glue that holds the team together in a lot of ways. I think his – I talked about his versatility earlier, but having a 6'10" guy who can guard on the perimeter, move his feet like he does, and has as quick of hands as he does is a luxury, right? Having someone with that kind of length and that kind of mobility. It's why I think he's going to get NBA looks this year, right? I don't know if I necessarily would have put him on I don't know if I would have put him on an NBA board at the beginning of the season, but now there's no question about it that the tools that he's shown. And he's just kind of he does all those things that, he does fill up the box score sheet, but he does lots of little things that don't always show up in the box score too, that just, he gives this team an energy, he gives this team an edge that it, maybe sometimes to a fault in terms of how much edge he brings to this team, but it's, he's a guy that, lights a fire under him and just really helps them to reach their biggest potential.
Yeah, I mean, unquestionable passion from Coleman Hawkins. So I said it during our videos when we were doing some of the awards and stuff like that. I know people aren't really a fan of Coleman Hawkins, but there's something about him. I really love watching him play. And yeah.
He's a different style of player than Draymond, but he has a similar energy where it's like you can't stand the guy when he's not on your team, but you love it when he is, right? Jaws a little bit, tons of defensive energy. He's kind of got a similar vibe in terms of just that guy.
Yeah.
He has not responded to my DM, by the way. So Rajeev, we had a bit with it was Casual Big Ten, I think. Was hoping to get Coleman Hawkins on his pod, and we were sending him DMs to try to get him there. So no progress on that.
And we said if he blocks you guys, then he really is the defensive player of the year. Add those to his stat block totals for the year.
He did not block us, not yet.
We'll see. All right, well, let's get to this last game. So this is a preview. Northwestern and Rutgers. Rutgers is actually favored in this one by 2 points, but in KenPom, Northwestern is actually favored to win this game by 1 point. So a little bit of different styles here and to see what could happen, but Northwestern losing Ty Berry. The rack is a really, really tough place to go play. Steve Peichel has his guys playing better so far with the addition back of Jeremiah Williams and what he's been able to bring to this team. So you add Williams to Rutgers, you subtract Ty Berry from Northwestern. Rajeev, what are your thoughts on this game and who wins and why?
I think Rutgers wins because it's very hard to win on the road in the Big Ten, and Rutgers is a very tough place to play. We just found that out. We got smoked up there for some odd reason. We decided not to show up. But I hope if Northwestern gets off the bus, they'll look better than Wisconsin did. But look, Northwestern's a good team, but Ty Berry obviously is a big loss. And Boo Buie, I like him a lot. I think he's great, but you're just not going to have that kind of success in that building. And it's hard to keep that intensity up every one of these games. I think this just is a classic game that Northwestern's going to drop because they're Northwestern, because they're going to keep making some mistakes, because Rutgers going to end up forcing 10 plus turnovers in this game, maybe 15. And you do that, it's going to be a tough place for them to shoot. Northwestern shooting, the 3-point percentage is not going to be as well as it is at home. And yeah, I think Rutgers wins this, and I think they win it probably by 10 or 15 points. I'm taking Rutgers -2. I just feel like, Northwestern's a good team, but this is just one of those road games that they're just not going to win, in my opinion. They don't have that moxie to go up to that arena that's a tough place and get a victory. You got to be one of the upper echelon teams to be able to do this and to go to places like this, which is a lot of these arenas, to be fair. But I mean, other than the Ohio States and the Michigans just this year, everyone else it's very, very difficult to go to their place and win.
Yeah, especially for Rutgers. And what's interesting is Rutgers is on a 3-game winning streak, but 2 of those wins were at other teams' places. I mean, this was at Michigan, at Maryland. Ever since Jeremiah Williams has been back, this has looked like a totally different team, which makes me just dislike the NCAA even more that they didn't give us a full season of Jeremiah Williams, because what could Rutgers have been this season if they did have him all year? Unfortunately, I don't really think they have a shot at making the tournament. There's just not enough good games left. There are good games left, but there's just not enough games left on this schedule. If you win at Purdue, if you win at Wisconsin, if you win at Nebraska, sure, maybe. But you're going to tell me Rutgers is going to win at Purdue, at Nebraska, at Wisconsin? Heck no, that's not That's not happening. So it's really, really crazy and unfortunate for Rutgers. But Anthony, I know you were going to bring up Ty Berry. So what are your thoughts on Northwestern not having them? And do you think Northwestern has a shot?
So yes, I think they have a shot. And the reason is that Rutgers is sub 300 in every shooting statistic there is. They're a putrid team offensively. That said, there's an on-off tool I use with Jeremiah Williams, and their offensive rating with him on the floor versus off the floor is completely different. So it's, this is a team that looks and feels different offensively with him. Plus it's at home. Northwestern's offensive points per possession for 100 possessions is 121.3 at home and 103.9 on the road. Combine that with Rutgers having the number 2 defense in the country, not the Big Ten, the country, that is going to make it really tough for Northwestern to pull out a win here. I don't think it's going to be a blowout because Northwestern still has a lot of options who can generate buckets. I think Boo Boo is always going to get, he's really, really good at getting to the foul line. But because it's on the road, I have Northwestern dropping, kind of a close, grinded out in the first 1 to 50 type game wins.
First 1 to 50. That's awesome. Yeah, no, what's crazy, and I know plus minus is not everybody's favorite stat, but I feel like it's a pretty simple stat to go to that can really show things. Jeremiah Williams has played three games this season. He is 46 plus minus. I mean, they only have 3 players higher than that. Derek Simpson, 67. Jermichael Davis is 53. Andre Hyatt is 47. I mean, those are the 3 guys that are in front of it. It's wild. What were you going to say, Anthony?
The adjusted, so the other one, the points per possession out of 100, they're 95 without him. They're 111.1 with.
Wow.
So,
you know where that ranks?
What?
KenPom? Where the 111th would rank in KenPom?
I don't know. It's a different metric, but it's a lot better. I mean, it's probably top 100, but right now they're a 300 level offense. Their offense is so bad, or has been up to this point.
Yeah.
It does kind of make you wonder what could have been though if he had been playing the whole year.
I'm telling you, man, I will never forgive the NCAA for a number of things, and this just adds to the list for me. So
my other question would be, so Northwestern is, I don't know if I'd say they're on the bubble. I'd say they're pretty comfortably in right now given the resume. But if Ty Berry is out and they end up dropping they have a pretty easy schedule for the most part for the rest of the season. Obviously, no Big Ten game is easy, but it's pretty favorable outside of the road game at State. If Northwestern ends up dropping 3 or 4 of these games, where do they sit in the tournament? Are they still comfortably in? Are they on the bubble? And if they don't have Ty Berry for the Big Ten tournament, what does that mean and look like? Is this a team that's in danger of missing the tournament without him?
Yeah, you want to take that first, Rajeev?
Yeah, I actually think that Northwestern's schedule is a little bit iffy. I mean, they have the 3 of their next 4 on the road. They've got obviously Rutgers, Indiana, and then Maryland after the home against Michigan. But yeah, I think they're in. Just they've got good enough wins, and I think generally speaking, if you can get to 500 or above in the conference, you're likely in the tournament. That's just a general rule of thumb that typically happens. So I feel like if I think they can get 3 more wins, get to 11, and at that point, I think they're in pretty easily. But they also, without Berry, they can go in a bit of a tailspin. I mean, if they lose these 3 out of their next 4 3 out of their next 4 road games, they lose them all, then it's a different situation, and they've got to really pull together in March. But either way, I think they're still in the tournament because it's unlikely that they drop that much.
Yeah, Northwestern has been a kind of a conundrum for me this season. They've been almost like the antithesis of Michigan State, whereas Michigan State and them have similar records, similar Big Ten records. Michigan State 16-9, 8-6 in the conference. Northwestern 17-7, 8-5 in the conference. But Michigan State is kind of hovering around 20. They're top 25 right now, I believe, in net. And then you have Northwestern, who's outside the top 50 and has been outside of the top 50 for quite some time now, ever since that Chicago State loss. And so it's been really, really interesting to think, like, what's going to happen here with Northwestern? I agree. If they win the games that they should be in the tournament. However, I know the committee loves the numbers and loves to look at that stuff. That's one of the reasons why even last year when Ohio State was 500, people were like, Ohio State still might make the tournament because they have really good numbers. But at the end of the day, if you are a good team but you don't have the numbers, it can be really, really hard for you to make the tournament. So, Anthony, I'm curious, are you on the stance that you think Northwestern is in, or does it kind of depend on how they finish it out here? What are your thoughts?
I think it does depend on how they finish it out. I think, if this is a team that's at 500 in the Big Ten, what are they at right now? They're 8-5.
8-5.
Yeah. So they'd have to finish 2-5, which is pretty bad, right? Obviously 500, you're not in. I think if you win 3 games, I think if you win 4 games, you're comfortable. I would say you're pretty comfortable. 12-8, even in a down Big Ten, is still pretty good. 11-9 is when you start to get dicey. 10-10, you are definitely not in the Big Ten this year. So let's say I think four is probably your get in. Number 3, you're sweating it out a little bit.
So let's just look at the schedule really fast. Rutgers at Indiana, Michigan at Maryland, Iowa at Michigan State, Minnesota. If they win those 3 home games and then say steal at Indiana or at Maryland, do you think that's enough to get them in? That's 4 wins, would take them to what, 12-8?
Yeah, yes, they're going to get in at 12-8. You're not leaving out a 12-8 Big Ten team.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that is enough to get them in. Where it starts to get interesting is, say they drop one of those home games, or whatever. It's with Tyberry out, who knows? That the team has lived and died by the 3. They have been so good from deep this year that if you lose one of your 3 best 3-point shooters, it's gonna leave a mark. You're gonna feel that loss.
And then on the other side of this, okay, you might call me crazy, and chat if you want to, dog me, because I know sometimes you don't like my my weird scenarios, but just humor me for a minute, okay? Rutgers the rest of the season, Northwestern at home, at Minnesota, at Purdue, Maryland, Michigan, at Nebraska, at Wisconsin, Ohio State. Rajeev didn't like my scenario here, I suppose. But Anthony, if they steal one of those at Purdue, at Nebraska, at Wisconsin, if they steal one of those and they win the rest of their games, that puts them at, what is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That puts them at 11-9. Well, an 11-9 Big Ten team, 11-9 in the conference, make the NCAA tournament, even though they've had some struggles so far this year?
I would say no. This is a down Big Ten. I think you need 12 wins to feel comfortable. 11-9, you're borderline, but they, like, metrics wise, I don't know where they're at in net, but I know on Torvik they're like 90th right now. And a lot of the games have kind of already been played at this point. Your net is pretty hard to move up and down. If you do have, what net does do is they rate blowouts really highly. So they blow out a bunch of teams, then that's the way that your net truly skyrockets. So the way that Rutgers was able to beat Wisconsin, that is a huge step in the right direction. But if you're hovering at 5, if you're 13-10 at this point in the season, you got a long journey to get back in the field. But so I guess, let's see, if they win 5 games of their 7, it's an interesting thought. It's kind of hard to see this team doing that, but I guess never count out Steve Peichel. He has a way of getting his guys, getting them organized, and again, they play great defense, and that will keep them in most games.
Yeah, no, I think it's hard to see him do it too. But like I said, they won their last 3 games, and 2 of those were on the road, and one of those was against, I think Wisconsin was ranked 10th or 11th at the time when they beat them. So, I mean, this Rutgers team with Jeremiah Williams, and if they beat Northwestern pretty handedly, like Rajeev said, 10, 15 points, that's been kind of their problem. They've been blown out this year, 61-46 against Penn State, 86-63 against Illinois, 73-55 against Michigan State. I'll give you that one there, Anthony. 86-77 against that. I mean, they've been, double-digit losses a few times this season, which hurts them. But yeah, if they can go out there and get some of these double-digit wins wins that are in the double digits, that would be really helpful.
The good news is they have 3 signature win opportunities on the rest of the schedule, right? A lot of teams kind of only have 1 or 2 at this point. So they have 3, right? Chance to, if you can get 2 of those 3, then things get really interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm rooting for it. I am rooting for a Rutgers to make the tournament with Jeremiah Williams, stick it to the NCAA. And hey, even if they lose all 3 of these really big wins, if they make a run on the tournament in the Big Ten tournament, who knows? I don't know. I am fishing for any way here.
And that's actually the other aspect too, is right. I'm just talking regular season. If you win 2 games in the Big Ten tournament, you get hot, then the committee starts to give you even more of a look. I'm fine with Rutgers not making the tournament because of last year and what they did to Michigan State and how they got left out of the tournament last year. I think karma has to come back for them one more time before I'll start rooting for them to make the tournament. I'm not sure if you remember what happened. It was not great.
Vaguely remind me. Vaguely I do, but
so Michigan State was had skipped a couple of games because of the shooting on campus.
Yes,
so they were short some games, and they were trying to reschedule the Rutgers game. And Steve Peichel basically said, "We don't want to reschedule it." And we're like, "Okay, And it was Michigan State was kind of on the bubble. We were looking for wins, and obviously, he didn't want to. It put his team in danger or whatever, but then when Selection Sunday came, nothing. Yeah. So it was, it's kind of like, sorry to hear that, Steve.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's crazy. I do remember that happening. I'll let you say that though. So, all right. Well, that's what we got for the show today. Thank you, Anthony, for coming on here, and thank you for Rajeev making it too. I'm not sure what happened. Maybe he had an issue with his internet, but hopefully all is well there. If you want to catch Rajeev, head on over to the Bucky Report on YouTube. It's also podcast, so wherever they're at on podcasts, you can find them over there as well. Anthony, why don't you tell people where they can find you at?
Yep, you can find me on Twitter at @TheRealShardy. If you see the poop emoji, you are in the right spot. For my more serious work, I write for Spartan Shadows, Spartan_Shadows on Twitter, and then SpartanShadows.com.
Very good. All right. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Appreciate it. Join us again next Sunday night. We'll be going through all the games there. Like I said, the big games to warrant that are Rutgers in Minnesota, kind of like we went over here. Illinois faces Maryland on Saturday. Wisconsin and Iowa. Michigan State goes to Michigan. We'll see if the Fighting Juwan Howards have anything to say about that game, or if the Tom Izzos can take it. So should be a fun weekend of basketball. We'll be here to recap it all with you Sunday night. Have a good one, everybody. Thanks for watching.